Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere a little grim. But don't worry, you're already doomed. The air smells like dried mushrooms and regret. You're crouched inside a Tang Dynasty apothecary, which looks less like a pharmacy and more like a haunted pantry. Dust curls in the late afternoon light like it's trying to escape. Every jar on the shelf is filled with something slightly wet-looking. Roots, twigs, shriveled fungi. Some things that still twitch when you look too long. The man behind the counter hasn't blinked in several minutes. He stirs a clay pot with a chopstick that probably also serves as a nose scratcher. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing that list grow. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're sick, or tired, or maybe just bored. But either way, the caravan master said, you looked pale this morning, so now you're here. The doctor, a word being used generously, offers you a steaming bowl of what he calls Tianma Tang. It smells like boiled wood and disappointment. He says it's made from gastrodia root, which is either a sacred medicine or a weird fungus, depending on who you ask. Historians still argue whether the root was considered a divine elixir or just a desperate last resort when nothing else worked. You sip it. It tastes like someone made tea out of furniture. Your stomach protests immediately, which the apothecary insists is a good sign. The demons are retreating, he mumbles, gesturing vaguely toward your abdomen. You're not sure which demons he's referring to. Your stomach cramps, or the part of you that thought this trip would be relaxing. The shelves around you creak. One is labeled dragon bone, but contains something suspiciously chicken-shaped. Another holds powdered deer antler, used for vital energy, or possibly making you slightly more confident about terrible decisions. You try not to breathe too deeply. A waft of dried centipede spice hits your nose like someone smacked you with a sandal. You ask what else is in the concoction. The man just points to a dried root curled like a question mark and says, "That one was blessed during an eclipse." You try not to ask any more questions. Behind you, a pot is boiling over. The smell is like hot pennies and old soup. The healer dabs at your forehead with something sticky. It's meant to balance your wind, which you assume is a metaphor, until he starts waving a feather over your chest. Somewhere, a bell jingles, but you're fairly sure no one opened the door. Meanwhile, your phone is dead, but so are your neighbors. One guy passed out after a dose of bitter leaf, and now the apothecary is using his unconscious body to prop open a cabinet. You try to focus on something comforting, like the memory of your last warm bath, or plumbing. Remember that time? You thought the floor was sticky just from spilled tea. You were wrong. It's sticky because the previous patient's salve boiled over and nobody cleaned it up. It squelches under your feet as you shift on the stool, which wobbles like a baby camel in sandals. The healer finally pronounces you treated. You're not better, just treated. It's an important distinction here. He hands you a pouch of dried herbs for later, and you try not to ask what later implies. You tie it to your belt anyway, already regretting the future. You step outside into the sun, blinking. Your tongue still tastes like ancient bark. The camel tied near the apothecary won't look at you. You don't blame it, you've just survived. Your first Silk Road healing session. Only 14 more to go. The next healer doesn't have a shop. He has a curtain. You're ushered through a side alley that smells like boiled onions and regret, into a dim little space tucked between two market stalls selling cracked porcelain and possibly haunted amulets. The curtain sways closed behind. The temperature drops, not because it's cooler, but because you've just entered the emotional climate of mild fear. This is your first acupuncture treatment, you think. The man doesn't explain much. He just gestures for you to lie down on a bamboo mat that's been enthusiastically used by people with worse hygiene than you. A breeze from a cracked wall brings in the smell of fish and old prayers. You try to relax, which is hard because the man is holding needles the length of your forearm. You ask if they're clean. He nods with the exact speed of someone who hasn't cleaned them. Ever. He hums while tapping your wrist, then abruptly stabs a needle into your ankle. You flinch. He hums louder. According to surviving scrolls, acupuncture was already well established by this time, used across China for everything from headaches to heartbreak. Historians still argue whether its effects were more spiritual placebo or physical reality. But tonight, you're about to find out the hard way. The healer, again, generously titled, presses into your spine like he's trying to unlock a secret passage. You grunt softly. Blocked key, he whispers, like it's your fault. He adds 4 more needles to your shoulder. You feel like a pincushion that never signed up for this. Somewhere outside, a rooster crows even though it's clearly past lunch. You wonder briefly if time still matters, or if you've entered one of those weird Silk Road wormholes where you'll re-emerge covered in herbs and 3 days late to your own funeral. Your nose itches, but you can't move. You're now full of needles, like a porcupine with back pain. He leans in and murmurs something about your spleen being cold. You don't know what that means. Neither does he, probably. But it sounds serious. He lights a cone of mugwort on your chest. It starts smoking. A thick, fuzzy warmth creeps through your skin and up into your sinuses. You inhale. It smells like burnt bread and armpit. A fringe practice called moxibustion was often used alongside acupuncture, burning herbs on or near the skin to stimulate healing energy. The problem is, near is a loose term here. The ember is now balancing on your collarbone. The healer sneezes. You don't ask why. You just hope he didn't inhale your spleen heat by accident. Meanwhile, the damp patch under your back from the bamboo mat is evolving. It now feels like it's sentient, possibly hostile. Remember that sticky spot on your foot from the apothecary? It's still there, and now it's collecting ash. You try to think modern thoughts. Netflix, toothpaste, socks that match, your phone. Oh wait, still dead. The healer adjusts one needle. Your entire leg twitches involuntarily. He looks pleased. That can't be a good sign. Then suddenly, it's over. He plucks the needles out with the flourish of a stage magician. You feel not worse, maybe different, definitely pointier. He hands you a thin roll of paper with instructions. It's in calligraphy so beautiful you almost forget you can't read it. As you step back out into the sun, blinking through the lingering scent of burnt mugwort and steamed bamboo, you swear your shoulders feel lighter. Then you trip over a chicken and remember, healing is a journey, usually through embarrassment. You've barely recovered from your human pincushion debut when your caravan moves out again, slowly, like a tired caterpillar with joint pain. You're nestled among trade goods that rattle with every bump, sacks of saffron, bales of silk, and one deeply suspicious jar of pickled something that leaks when the wind hits wrong. The night comes quickly. Cold settles in, like an overly familiar cousin, uninvited, but very committed. You've developed a cough, or maybe you've always had it. It's hard to tell anymore. Dust chokes the air, your throat, and your will to complain. A caravan healer notices you're wheezing. He's about 70% beard, 30% eye contact, and 0 bedside manner. He pulls you behind a dune with the quiet authority of someone about to smear something unpleasant on your face. This man believes in camel grease. He slathers it on your chest with the vigor of someone polishing a shoe they don't like. Good, for lungs, he grunts, and pats you with a hand that has probably performed a goat autopsy today. The grease is thick, oddly fragrant, and makes your tunic cling like a damp sea creature. He follows this with a poultice made of crushed fig, 2 drops of oil and something uncomfortably warm. Draws out cold demons, he says, pressing it firmly over your sternum. Historians still argue whether Silk Road healers were primarily spiritual, herbalist, or just doing their best with what little remained unspoiled. But this man clearly believes in the gospel of fat and fruit. To seal the healing, he whispers a short prayer in a dialect you don't recognize. You only catch the word for lungs and maybe goat. He then wraps you in a wool blanket that smells like 10 seasons of wet camel and gestures for you to sit still for the night. Meanwhile, your lips are cracked, your fingers are numb, and your back still tingles from acupuncture trauma. Remember the bamboo mat? At least it was flat. This is sand. Sand doesn't care about your spine. The night deepens. The stars burn above, utterly unsympathetic. You try to sleep, but the cough gets worse. A second healer offers to sing to your chest. You let him. The song sounds like a lullaby sung from underwater, with occasional throat clearing. Somewhere nearby, a camel groans sympathetically. You begin to feel the camel grease warming. It might be working, or you might be slowly roasting. Either way, it's a sensation. The poultice slips at some point in the night, and now your armpit smells faintly of figs. You accept this new identity. In the morning, your cough has dulled, your dignity is damp, and your blanket has migrated halfway into the dunes. The healer smiles and proclaims you open to healing now. You're not sure if that means your paws, your mind, or your wallet, possibly all three. He offers you a final treatment, something called bone pressing. You decline. Politely, you rejoin the caravan, still slightly slick. The wind picks up. Sand sticks to your face. You are now, essentially, a healing granola bar. By now, you've learned something important. If a child on the Silk Road offers you medicine, you probably shouldn't take it, but you will. You stumble into a bustling Uzbek market square, woozy from camel grease fumes, and still emotionally haunted by your fig armpit. Colourful tents billow like sails, the air thick with cumin, smoke, and unsolicited advice. You're squinting at a basket labelled Heart Mender when a child, no older than 9 and probably running their own business empire, shoves a jar of something golden into your hands. Honey, she says, magic, also makes feet smooth. You're not sure if she means the same feet, but you nod politely. The jar is warm, suspiciously warm. She insists this honey is from mountain bees who only pollinate healing flowers. Also that it cures heartbreak, foot rot, stomach growls, and somehow disobedient camels. Historians still argue whether honey on the Silk Road was truly a panacea or just a really persistent sales pitch. But at this point, you've consumed worse. You taste it. It's floral, sharp, and leaves a tingling aftertaste that might be divine, or venom. The girl grins like she's either proud of your bravery or about to disappear with your money. Possibly both. You ask, what's in it? She leans in conspiratorially. Secret bee path, then vanishes into the crowd. The jar is half empty by the time you realize it's not honey. Not exactly. It's thickened with fermented pollen, date resin, and something grainy that might be crushed pearl or just ambitious sand. A local merchant spots your confusion and laughs. Ah yes, the healing blend, he says. Good for everything, except trust. Meanwhile, your fingers are sticky, and the wind is back with its favorite game, sandblast the orifices. You tuck the jar into your satchel, which is starting to resemble a lost and found for strange smells. Your stomach gurgles. It's not a complaint, more like a warning shot. You consider whether the honey has activated something. Maybe a bee path inside you, maybe regret. You pass a trio of women grinding herbs under a silk awning. One offers you a tea made from quince and thyme. You accept out of politeness, then watch as they sprinkle something into the cup that sizzles slightly on contact. Remember your last mystery drink? The one that tasted like antique bark. This one tastes like candle smoke and hopes. It clears your sinuses so hard you feel it behind your eyes. You sit down near a trader selling copper bangles shaped like snakes. He tells you about a traveling healer who once sold moonlit honey that turned out to be dyed goat syrup. You don't tell him what's in your bag, mostly because you're still unsure. Meanwhile, your cough returns. Not strong, but just enough to remind you it's still co-starring in this episode. A woman with 7 silver rings on one hand says she can fix your lungs by rubbing honey on the soles of your feet. You stare at her. She stares back. You finally say, "I've done worse," and hand over your shoes. The sensation is strange, warm, ticklish, vaguely humiliating. But your cough does settle. Maybe it's placebo. Maybe it's shame. The honey soaks into your skin. Or maybe your soul. You can't tell anymore. But your feet are sticky. Your heart's still beating. And the air smells slightly nicer than usual. You limp back to your caravan with one shoe on, one foot gleaming like a breakfast pastry, and a growing suspicion that this journey has only just begun to get weird. You wake to the sound of snoring, not human, camel, deep, gurgly, and frankly more restful than your own sleep. You're somewhere on the outskirts of a Kyrgyz yurt camp, propped against a crate of onions that doubled as your pillow. Your spine is sending mixed signals, mostly threats. A cheerful man with too many teeth and not enough personal space offers you a steaming cup of something white and fizzy. You ask what it is. He beams. "Kumis," he says, as if that explains anything. It does not. You swirl the drink. It fizzes like a soda and smells like if milk had opinions. You take a sip. It hits like fermented yogurt and regret. Still, the man watches you with such enthusiasm that you nod politely, as though your esophagus isn't actively protesting. Kumis, fermented mare's milk, was prized by nomadic cultures for its supposed healing properties. Rich in probiotics, electrolytes, and mystery, it was believed to restore vitality and balance the body. Historians still argue whether the benefits were nutritional or if people just learned to enjoy being slightly tipsy before noon. This version? Strong. Very strong. Your vision goes soft around the edges. Someone nearby is singing a song with no clear melody and too many vowels. You're pretty sure it's about a horse with 3 hearts and a magic saddle. The healer returns, now carrying a bundle of herbs tied together with horsehair. He lights one end like a giant incense stick and waves it around you. The smoke smells like pine, sage, and mildly haunted laundry. You are instructed to lie flat on a sheepskin while he chants and sprinkles powdered juniper on your chest. You do not ask why. You've learned not to. As you stare up at the sky, you realize your stomach is no longer bothering you. Neither is your cough. You feel light, slightly wobbly, but in a philosophical way. He tells you to think only of clouds. You try. But your mind drifts to last night's honeyfoot therapy and the acupuncture and the camel grease. You're starting to feel like a soft, walking experiment in intercontinental healing. Meanwhile, your lips are sticky from dried kumis. Your hair smells faintly of wood smoke and warm milk. A child hands you a chunk of fermented cheese, which you accept purely out of social pressure. You chew slowly. It tastes like soap and history. Later, the healer offers a dream reading. He says, if you sleep within the circle of goat skulls, decorative, supposedly, you'll receive a vision that will guide your healing. You're not sold on the aesthetics, but you're exhausted. So you curl up on a pile of sheep wool, tuck your pouch of mystery honey under your arm, and let the fermented milk lull you into something approximating sleep. You dream of floating, of warm wind, of your phone, fully charged and displaying clean GPS directions home. But then the camel snorts in your ear and reminds you, you're still here. Morning comes with the smell of fresh flatbread and feet. You wake slightly damp, slightly clearer-headed, and very aware that you've just consumed more bacteria in the past 12 hours than a swimming pool filter. Still, you feel better? It's hard to tell. Your joints crack when you stand, but in a satisfying way. The healer pats your shoulder. You are strong now, he says, then offers you more kumis. You pretend not to hear. Samarkand greets you like a silk-wrapped slap. To the senses, ornate tiles shimmer under a punishing sun, markets roar with colour and bartering, and you're immediately ushered into a bathhouse by a man who says you look energetically bloated. You're not sure if it's an insult or a diagnosis. Before you can protest, you're seated on a heated stone slab in a tiled chamber that smells like rosewater and ambition. A man with the build of a bored ox and the enthusiasm of a magician begins unpacking a set of what can only be described as medieval wine glasses. These are cupping jars, and you're about to become a human science experiment. The healer lights, a bit of wool inside each jar, sucks the oxygen out, then quickly plants them along your back. The suction is immediate and alarming. Your skin balloons up like pastry dough under each glass. Releases bad blood, he says, casually adjusting a jar that's now pinching your spine like a gossiping aunt. Historians still argue whether cupping therapy on the Silk Road was rooted in bloodletting beliefs or simply a way to make patients feel like something was happening. Spoiler: something is definitely happening. You lie there, trying to breathe. Your back feels like it's being gently mugged. Meanwhile, sweat pools in, places that shouldn't be allowed to pool. The tile beneath your body is uncomfortably warm, and the scent of boiled herbs from the next room keeps floating in like your sinuses signed up for a cooking class. At one point, a jar falls off. It makes a pop that's both hilarious and unsettling. The healer shrugs and reattaches it. You're now part suction cup toy, part sentient dumpling. You ask how deep the treatment goes. Just the neck, she replies. Unless the demons are in your ears, then deeper. You smile weakly, remove your shoes, and step in. The sand is warm, then hot, then very hot. They begin to bury you with the tenderness of someone preparing a very anxious potato. By the time your arms are pinned under layers of scorching grit, you start to question your life choices. The woman pats your forehead with a wet cloth that might have once been mint-scented. It draws out the bad heat, she says. Very traditional. Historians still argue whether sand baths were truly medicinal or simply a form of endurance training. Nomadic cultures along the Silk Road swore by them, citing everything from improved digestion to spiritual clarity. Right now, you'd settle for not becoming a roasted snack for desert foxes. You lie still, surrounded by murmured prayers and flies that hover like overly curious uncles. The sun climbs. So does your internal temperature. Remember the fig poultice from before? That was a walk in the park compared to this full-body bake. Your nose itches, but your arms are sealed like leftovers in a clay oven. A small girl appears with a parasol and holds it delicately over your face. It helps, barely. She offers you a sip of cold water from a cracked ceramic jug. It tastes like mineral disappointment, but you nearly cry with gratitude. Then the healer starts chanting. Slowly, repetitively. It becomes a rhythm that syncs with the pounding in your temples. You close your eyes and float in a strange, slow fever dream. You remember your back covered in glass cups, your feet slathered in honey, the taste of sour milk and mystery. Your body has been steeped, smoked, needled, suctioned, and now buried. You wonder what's left to treat. 30 minutes pass, maybe an hour. It's impossible to know. Time doesn't exist in the sand, only sweat and surrender. Then, without warning, they begin digging you out. The air on your skin feels cold, almost rude. You sit up slowly, blinking like a mole emerging from a spiritual nap. Your joints pop, your spine creaks, but your headache is gone. And for the first time in days, your breathing feels easy. You're still caked in sand and embarrassment, but otherwise, surprisingly okay. They hand you a robe, offer a date stuffed with almonds, and declare the demons cooked out. You don't ask what happens if they weren't. As you shuffle back to camp, brushing sand out of places no sand should ever reach, you notice your cough hasn't returned. Your skin glows. Or maybe it's just dehydration. Either way, you've officially been baked, blessed, and released. You've had roots, needles, honey, sand. You've been steamed and salted and partially smoked. So naturally, it makes perfect sense when a monk invites you into a dimly lit temple to smear worms on your rash. You didn't know you had a rash. He assures you, you do now. The temple is carved partly into the side of a cliff. It smells of incense, mildew, and old scrolls that may or may not still be readable. The monk speaks little, but gestures a lot, especially toward your arm, where a faint red blotch has developed. Possibly from sand, possibly from fate. He unwraps a small pouch of silk and reveals what looks like crushed oatmeal mixed with regret. Silkworm, he says reverently. Healing. You nod, because at this point, why not? He mixes the powder with a sticky paste. Possibly rice, possibly tree sap, possibly something you'd rather not know, and applies it to your arm with a carved bone spoon. It's cold, surprisingly cold, and smells faintly like sweet hay and wet parchment. Silkworm-based salves were part of traditional Chinese medicine, believed to treat inflammation, skin conditions, and even nerve pain. Historians still argue whether this was due to actual enzymes or just really optimistic placebos. You're not here to solve the debate. You're here to not itch. He wraps your arm in mulberry paper, then begins a chant that sounds like someone tuning a lute underwater. You sit still as a series of temple bells ring in the distance, each one echoing slightly slower than your heartbeat. Then, just as your shoulders begin to relax, he places an open scroll on your lap and asks you to focus your eyes on a symbol. It's a character you've never seen before, possibly a poem or maybe a warning. You stare at it anyway, because disobedience in a cliffside temple feels unwise. As you squint, your arm begins to tingle, not painfully, just enough to let you know that something is either working or preparing to molt. Then, the second phase, blister rites. He doesn't call it that, of course. He just says, "We now open the heat paths." He presses a small heated stone wrapped in cloth against the salve. You yelp quietly. He smiles gently. The warmth intensifies. You try to breathe through it. Remember the camel grease, the acupuncture, that tiny little honey foot child entrepreneur. None of them warned you that medicine on the Silk Road often feels like your body being tricked into cooperating. You shift your weight. The stone moves slightly. Steam rises from the paste. It smells better than you'd expect. Like toasted rice, crackers, and spiritual resolve. Eventually, the heat subsides. The monk removes the wrapping with the care of someone unbinding a sacred book. Your arm is flushed, but no longer itching. No rash, just a faint outline of the paper's texture, like an ancient watermark on your skin. He bows. You bow. You exchange. Nothing but silence, which feels more sincere than any thank you in words. Outside, the sun has faded to an amber haze. Your steps feel lighter, though your pouch of healing mementos is definitely not. Now it contains sacred worm paste, beetroot poultice residue, a wooden spoon, and the ghost of about 8 different questionable liquids. You sit by a small stream, rinse your hands, and stare at your reflection. Your eyes are puffy, your skin's uneven, but something inside feels steady, or at least stitched back together by rituals, smoke, and protein-rich insects. A bird lands beside you and pecks at the stream. You nod at it, respectfully. It does not acknowledge you. You are officially a believer in worms. For today, anyway. At this point, you're convinced that healing on the Silk Road is just an elaborate dare orchestrated by history. So when a leathery old man in a sheepskin hat invites you to the boiling, you hesitate, briefly, then follow him into a tent that smells like broth and bold decisions. Inside, it's steamy. Not cozy sauna steamy, more like accidentally opened the wrong pot steamy. In the center is a massive iron cauldron bubbling with a murky liquid, surrounded by smaller pots, each holding some unidentifiable bit of anatomy. You spot hooves, possibly goat, possibly not. Your host gestures proudly at a bowl filled with cloudy soup. Kashk, he announces, for joints, for heart, for everything. You peer into the bowl. It looks like melted glue peppered with cartilage. He scoops you a generous ladleful and waits. Kashk is a fermented dairy product, often made from dried yogurt or whey, used for centuries in Central Asian cooking and, according to some, medicine. Mixed with boiled goat bones, it becomes something between a tonic and a culinary endurance test. Historians still argue whether this dish was a medicinal remedy or just a way to not waste any part of the animal. You sip, it coats your throat like warm clay and tastes like someone boiled ambition in a cave. The healer adds a chunk of what might be tendon and insists you chew. You do, slowly. Your jaw clicks like an old drawer. Then begins the lecture. He points to a crude drawing on the tent wall, something that resembles a goat, a lightning bolt, and a ladder. This is the body, he explains, tapping the goat. This is healing, he taps the lightning. This is climbing out of weakness. The ladder, it's metaphorical, probably. After the first bowl, you start sweating. After the second, your ears ring. By the third, you're either healed or hallucinating. Possibly both. You can't feel your cough anymore. You can't feel your knees either. You remember the smoke ritual, the warm sand cocoon, the silkworm salve. Compared to this boiling pot of cartilage and cosmic theory, those were spa treatments. A small boy hands you a rag to wipe your face. You thank him and realize your mouth no longer works quite right. It's fine. Communication is overrated when your tongue has officially retired. Outside the tent, the air hits you like a blessing. You sit on a rock, clutching your belly like a pilgrim of dairy and endurance. The old healer joins you and presses a hand to your shoulder. Your body remembers now, he says. You don't ask what it remembers. Some things are better left as mysteries. He gives you a small leather pouch of dried tendon strips for travel strength. You nod, tuck it into your pouch, and wonder how many of your possessions are technically edible now. You stand, slowly, like bread rising, and take in the horizon. The road stretches dusty and shimmering ahead, and behind you, the tent bubbles, softly with the next batch of goat philosophy. Your steps are heavier, but your joints move without complaint. Either you've healed, or you've transcended the ability to notice pain, which honestly is almost the same thing. You should have known better than to follow the man in orange pants. He beckoned you from the steps of a temple shaped like a question mark, promising movement medicine and elastic rebirth. You were intrigued, tired, mildly swollen, and, let's face it, no longer fully in control of your own decision-making. Now, you're bent into a shape that defies your understanding of vertebrae. The healer, a wiry man with arms like rope and a serene grin that suggests mischief, is guiding you through ancient yoga practices introduced by traveling Indian ascetics. The Silk Road didn't just carry silk and spices, it also trafficked in poses that mocked the human skeleton. You are currently the punchline. The room is spare. One mat, one bell, one small incense cone burning something that smells like enlightenment and regret. You've been holding Twisted Crane with Thunder Breath for what feels like 4 years. Breathe into the pain, he whispers. You try, you fail, you breathe into your own panic instead. Yoga was indeed brought to Central Asia through cultural exchanges with India, becoming interwoven with various healing and spiritual traditions. Historians still argue whether its primary use along the Silk Road was physical restoration, meditative focus, or just a very polite way to torture yourself. He folds you again. Something pops. You think it's a joint or a memory. Remember your acupuncture session. That was a pleasant tickle compared to this. Back then, you were a sleepy hedgehog full of pins. Now, you're a crumpled manuscript trying not to tear. You're told to rest in corpse pose. You don't move. Not out of peace. Your limbs have unionized. After some time, the healer rolls you onto your stomach and begins something he calls spinal tapping. It's rhythmic, calming, and just weird enough to work. You feel the tension leak from your muscles, like old soup escaping a cracked bowl. He hums softly. You hum too. Not intentionally, it just slips out with the next exhale. He presses a warm cloth onto your lower back, soaked in sandalwood oil and possibly optimism. You remember the silkworm salve, the goat broth, the glass jars that clung to you like needy ghosts. All of it feels like prelude to this one long, stretched-out sigh. Then, he pulls out a string of beads and places it in your palm. Focus your healing through stillness, he says, which you interpret as, stay very still or your spine might file a complaint. You lie flat for 20 minutes, maybe more. The incense burns down to a stub. The sun shifts on the temple floor. Your thoughts slow to the pace of moss, and then, just as your muscles stop screaming, he rings a bell. One chime, soft and deliberate. Your eyes open without permission. He smiles. Your joints, he says, have been spoken to. You believe him. You leave the temple walking like someone who has seen the inside of their own hip socket. The sky looks different, probably the same, but different. Your satchel sways beside you, heavy with relics of your healing so far. Dried tendons, worm salve, incense, and memories that might be trauma or personal growth. You bend down to tie your sandal and realize no cracking, no pain, just you, the road, and the sound of your back not yelling at you. A miracle, or maybe just elastic rebirth. You're barely recovered from being folded like sacred laundry when a whisper reaches your camp. Scorpion oil under the moonlight. You do not know who says it, or why they think you'd be interested. But you find yourself following the voice anyway, like someone half asleep or spiritually blackmailed. The trail leads you to a roadside tent framed by lanterns made from old gourd shells, their light flickering like secrets. A thin man with knuckles, like walnuts, gestures you in. Very ancient, he says. Only tonight, only this moon. Inside, it smells like resin and heat. Tiny bottles line the walls, each filled with glistening liquid and what appears to be a preserved insect, curled like a punctuation mark. You try not to stare at the biggest one. It looks ready. The man selects a vial labeled with a symbol you don't recognize. He holds it up to the moonlight and the liquid glows faintly. Scorpion oil, he says. For circulation, memory, and courage. You consider whether courage will be required to apply the oil or merely to survive the after effects. Scorpion-based remedies were used in some ancient Middle Eastern and Central Asian healing traditions, often infused into oil for their energizing properties. Historians still argue whether it was science, superstition, or just highly motivated marketing. You ask if the stingers were removed. He doesn't answer. He dips a slender brush into the oil and gently paints it along your spine. It's cool, then warm, then cool again. The scent is sharp, citrus, pine, and something faintly metallic. You sit, cross-legged, as the oil begins to tingle. Your hands go numb for a moment. You're told this is normal. He chants softly, using a rhythm that seems to match the flicker of the lanterns. The moon overhead brightens, casting your silhouette in shadow against the tent wall. For a moment, you look like someone important, or someone in danger. The tingling intensifies, then stabilizes. You feel oddly alert, like you could memorize a poem or dodge a philosophical attack. Remember the goat broth? The time you saw smoke birds in a Sufi shrine? This is not like that. This is lucid, sharp, like a cup of coffee that speaks Latin. Then the healer applies, the oil to your temples. Just a dot. Your vision flickers at the edges, not unpleasantly. Your hearing sharpens. Somewhere in the distance, a camel sneezes, and it sounds like an opera note. He places a stone in your palm. Grounding, he says. Keep it for the walk back. You thank him, which feels inadequate. The walk back is slow. Everything glows. The sand is soft, the stars impossibly smug, and your brain feels like it's humming. You reach your bedroll but can't sleep. Not yet. You sit and sort through your pouch by moonlight. The honey jar, the worm paste, the rosewater, the tendon, strips. And now a vial of scorpion oil, corked and radiant. You've become a wandering apothecary of your own condition. As you finally settle into sleep, the oil still tingling on your spine, you dream vividly of glowing symbols, long roads, and a scorpion that speaks in riddles. It tells you to rest, for now. You awaken to salt in your teeth, not metaphorically. Actual salt, gritty and slightly sweet, clinging to your lips as though you've been kissing the earth. You sit up groggily to find yourself at the entrance of a cave, glowing faint, pink from within, like someone accidentally left a lantern inside a gemstone. This, you're told, is the salt cave of temporary enlightenment. You don't ask who named it. You've learned not to question branding on the Silk Road. A woman with copper jewelry and salt-dusted robes guides you inside. Silence, she whispers, before you've even said hello. She hands you a clay stool and a thin blanket that smells like lavender and warm rock. The cave is cooler than outside, but not cold, just enough to make your skin aware of itself. You sit among strangers who also appear to be healing or hiding. No one speaks. The salt walls hum faintly in the quiet, as though they remember the ocean. Salt caves, natural or man-made, were used in ancient healing for respiratory conditions, skin ailments, and sometimes spiritual clarity. Historians still argue whether these effects came from mineral particles in the air or from the sheer peace of being somewhere no one expects you to talk. You lean back, breathe. The air is crisp, almost sharp. It tastes faintly of minerals and moss, like licking a philosopher's rock collection. The woman lights a small dish of resin, and its smoke curls lazily toward the cave ceiling. You feel your lungs open with a kind of sleepy reluctance. The tension in your jaw, unnoticed until now, begins to unhook itself. Remember the sand bath, the goat broth, the yoga-assisted exorcism of your hip socket. This is not that. This is nothing. And in its nothingness, it becomes everything. Someone beside you sneezes. You do not flinch. Instead, you observe the sound as it floats and dissolves into the saline air, like it was meant to be part of the ritual. The guide walks slowly through the chamber, sprinkling powdered rose quartz along the floor. Or maybe it's just fancy salt. You're beyond needing answers. The silence stretches. Time disappears. So does your list of complaints. For a brief moment, you forget your satchel full of fermented dairy products and ancient insect oils. You forget the scorpion that blessed your back. You forget your cough, your spine, even the camel that judged you days ago. You simply exist, salted, still, suspended in sacred pause. Then quietly, you're tapped on the shoulder. Time to go. You stand. Your knees ache less. Your head feels like it belongs to someone who drinks tea slowly and owns soft things. Outside, the wind greets you like an old friend with improved manners. The cave disappears behind you, swallowed by the landscape as though it never existed. Maybe it didn't. You walk slowly, your breath deeper now, clearer. You do not speak for a long time. Not because you're instructed to, but because silence still clings to your ribs like a final blessing. You are no longer just a traveler. You are a traveler who has been quiet on purpose. You haven't even sat down yet, and someone is already slapping cabbage on your chest. It's pickled, cold, and smells like a decision you didn't get to make. You're too tired to protest. You've just arrived at a bustling caravanserai near the Caspian, where traders, healers, gossipers, and extremely confident amateur doctors converge for rest, deals, and apparently vegetable compresses. This draws out the last of the road, a middle-aged woman explains, securing the cabbage with a strip of linen that may once have been part of a curtain. You'll feel lighter. You already feel like a walking salad. Cabbage poultices were used across many cultures along the Silk Road for inflammation, chest congestion, and spiritual rebalancing. Historians still argue whether the effectiveness came from sulfur compounds or from the fact that applying pickled food to your body forces you to slow down and reassess everything. You're guided to a bench next to two traders who immediately begin gossiping about horses, about someone's foot fungus, and about the Mongols' questionable new ointment made from boiled nettle and sheep's breath. You try to listen, but your focus is broken by the slow ooze of cabbage brine trickling down your ribs. It's oddly soothing. The cloth tightens with each breath, like the vegetable is reminding you who's in charge now. One trader offers you a sip of tea brewed with apricot pits. You decline politely. The other recommends adding garlic oil to your poultice for spiritual conductivity. You're not entirely convinced, but you let her dab some on your temples anyway. It smells like a tavern argument. You lean back against a wall worn smooth by decades of exhausted backs. A small boy sweeps dust into neat, ineffective piles. A man walks by dragging a sheep with a limp. The sheep looks at you like it knows what you're going through. Remember the salt cave? The silence? The profound stillness? This is the opposite. This is healing through noise, banter, and fermented cabbage water. You're not meditating, you're marinating. Someone nearby argues about whether a particular type of donkey fat can cure blisters. Another claims the secret is to sing to the blister first. You wonder briefly if you're dreaming, but then a fly lands on your face and confirms this is all very real. The woman returns and removes the cabbage compress with the flair of someone revealing a magic trick. Better? She asks. You don't know how to answer. You don't feel worse. Your chest is cool, your sinus is oddly clear, and your skin smells like lunch. That counts as progress. She offers you a pouch of dried nettles, just in case. You add it to your satchel, now bulging with remedies, rituals, and regrets. Somewhere inside, a scorpion oil vial clicks against the side of a wooden spoon. As you rise to leave, the traders wave goodbye with the air of people who just watched a soap opera end. You're not sure what role you played, main character, comic relief, or cautionary tale, but you played it earnestly. You step back into the wind, which catches your robe and carries with it the faint smell of vinegar and garlic. You are now officially impossible to sneak up on, and so you walk, partly healed, mostly seasoned. You're limping now, but not because you're in pain, more because your body is confused about what stage of transformation it's in. Between the cabbage compress and the spinal scorpion oil, you've become a walking contradiction, so it makes perfect sense that your final stop involves crushed emeralds. You arrive at a dusty garden shrine just past the outskirts of the city, part herbarium, part rumour mill. A frail herbalist with shaking hands and fierce eyes beckons you toward a crumbling stone bench. You've made it, she says, though you're not sure if she means to the shrine, the end of the journey, or just your physical limit. She unwraps a bundle of cloth to reveal a collection of small, chipped ceramic jars. One glints. Inside is a viscous green liquid, glittering faintly in the sun. Emerald tonic, she says, as if announcing a final test. You try to ask how emeralds are involved, but she's already pouring a thimble-sized amount into a shallow bowl. It sparkles like magic, or like water that should not sparkle. She explains that, according to tradition, crushed emeralds, very finely ground, were once considered capable of cleansing the blood, strengthening the heart, and improving clarity of thought. Historians still argue whether emeralds were ever actually ingested or just worn by those who could afford to sparkle spiritually. You stare into the bowl, your own reflection warped and tinged green. Only a sip, she says. It tastes like wet stone and accidental wisdom. You feel it all the way down your spine, which by now has been needled, tapped, twisted, and sand-baked into a state of enlightened confusion. As you sit there, blinking at the aftertaste of geology, she begins to hum. She mixes other herbs, some familiar, some definitely not, into a small mortar. She grinds them slowly, speaking softly to each one, as though coaxing secrets from leaves. She makes you inhale the final blend, steam rising from hot water, the scent like rain on tile, sharp and kind at the same time. You think of the first, apothecary, with his suspicious roots and furniture tea, of the camel grease, the acupuncture, the sand, the worms, the cabbage, the goat broth philosophy. You think of your satchel, now a museum of the human attempt to fix itself with dirt and dreams. You ask the herbalist if the tonic really contained emerald. She shrugs. Maybe. Or maybe it's just what people believed would work. And somehow, that answer soothes you more than the tonic. She places a smooth green stone in your hand, uncrushed, cool, and quiet. For memory, she says, and to remind you that healing is sometimes just not being alone. You bow your head, not from reverence, but from a kind of exhausted gratitude. Then she says nothing else, just waves you off as the sun begins to slip behind the garden wall. You walk slowly back toward the road, your skin tingling, your breath steady, your pouch heavy with relics and salt. The Silk Road stretches out before you, but you don't rush. You've collected enough for now. Tonight, you've traveled far, through smoke and silence, salt and sand. You've let strangers paint your body with oil, herbs, and things better left unnamed. You've breathed incense older than your lineage and eaten dairy products your stomach may never forgive. But now your journey can rest. Let your breath settle like dust on a desert floor. Let your spine release the last echoes of stone, beds, and camel trudges. You are no longer in a tent, or a cave, or a shrine. You are here. You are safe. And you are, somehow, still whole. The aches may still hum beneath your skin, but they're gentler now. Like old stories retold in quieter voices. Your hands, once clenched against the cold, have loosened. Your shoulders no longer wear the weight of curiosity, only the memory of it. The wind outside has gone still. The moon, wherever it is tonight, watches kindly. The road no longer calls. Let your thoughts drift like silk on a breeze. No destination, no urgency, just movement, gentle, aimless, free. And as you breathe in, one last time, remember this. You have plumbing. You have tea bags. You have pillows that aren't stuffed with straw and shame. You are a miracle of comfort. Sleep well, traveler. You've earned the rest. End of script. Sweet dreams. Download as audio.